Only in this program and only audience of the Звезда TV channel will see unique Russian copters from the future. The quietest quadcopter, the first passenger carrying copter, which is designed for taking part in offensive operations, the flying Wi-Fi cell, and the drone which can work for hours using hydrogen. Moreover, we will show you a life-threatening experiment. Is it possible for human to handle overload sitting in the cabin of pilotless aircraft? All above mentioned right now in military acceptance. Let's imagine the situation where we have an abstract house which is overrun by terrorists and we should exterminate them from this house. It's obvious that our situation is playing out in paintball stadium, but it's important to understand the main rule. These terrorists will be terminated via pilotless aircraft. I'd like to add that we will work simultaneously from earth and from air. Unfortunately, in current age of terrorism, it's pretty easy to imagine such situation. And it's not really hard to imagine how special forces will act. But before attacking and venture soldiers and hostages lives, it's necessary to analyze the situation, to do reconnaissance. In this situation, a quadcopter could show its worth, especially this one. Nothing special from outside, but this is a case when hearing once is better than seeing 100 times. This is new and completely unique aircraft, called Orlan K4. Its main advantage is quietness. It's almost inaudible because of big screws and low speed of rotation of the screw. That's why such huge copter, more than 1.5 meters, cannot be heard nor seen, and it has significant advantages compared to all commercial drones. Also, and can be used for special tasks because of more than 2 hours flying time. Please mind, this is the first time when it shows to the public. This is the quietest copter in Russia. Already in a couple dozen meters, its noise cannot be distinguished from ordinary wind. But anyone who has dealt with civil quadcopters knows they are easier to hear than to see. Screws rotate at high speed, and the noise is like a swarm of angry bees. They have a significant disadvantage. They are very noisy. They have low flying time and they cannot carry additional equipment. But this copter doesn't fly, it raises silently soars. Don't rush to search for it on the shelves, because it is produced in the same military factory as Orlan 10, the most massive drone of the Russian army. We have already told about its capabilities. A new version of the drone can hold in the air for 1 day. His camera is able to recognize the desired object from a distance of several kilometers and automatically follow it. What was the distance from me to the copter? A few kilometers. The maximum range was about 3 kilometers. Now it's near 1.5. It means that now, and we see you online on the monitor, and tracking completely automatically. Can you see that I'm spinning around? Yes. Why am I telling this? The fact that the tiny silent copter has exactly the same camera. By the way, in the same military factory in St. Petersburg is producing another copter Orlan, but it has 6 screws. Here it is. This Orlan is noisier than its quiet fellow, but he has other aims. With a highly sensitive thermal camera, this hexacopter can find a man at night in a dense forest, and if necessary to point a laser at the target. Copter may hang and stop, in fact, at one point. Thus, it will highlight the object of interest and will provide a response activity. An opportunity to hang in the air is the main advantage of drones copters over its older brothers, drone soaring machines. Copters can provide competition to more serious contenders in air reconnaissance, such as airplanes or helicopters. Firstly, because of the price and simplicity of operation, and secondly, uncontrollability. Specialists can use them to perform real aerial acrobatics. This is one of the first Open Russia Championships on the UAV control art. This copter can demonstrate aerobatics, initial, Which, for example? Of course, I can make the cobra on it, but the barrel roll, the loop I can make easily. Moreover, copters can instantly turn around at least through 180 degrees, so as beyond planes and drone soaring machines' dreams. After all, this is an ability of a non-military usual civil quadcopter, but specially designed for racing. Control is performed with a remote control. I have such remote. There is a camera on the copter. Camera transmits a signal to the transmitter which stands inside, and of course through the antenna it's transmitted to the video glasses. Here we have video glasses, wearing which we can see what copter sees, and it turns like we are inside the copter, and we can perform control, maybe set from the inside. That's what the operator sees through video glasses. Now, he sits on a chair at the edge of the track, dimly lit room, luminous diode flags. The flying here is against the clock. The smaller the error or less penalty points. Participants operate the copters at a height of 1 and 1.5 meters above the ground. If higher, would fly over the track. If below, the helicopter risks to crash. However, this is a simple task for these machines. So, the second item in the list of advantages, we will note the excellent controllability. Another important advantage of the copters, vertical takeoff and landing. To launch the pilotless aircraft, the special catapult or special skills needed, and landing UAV aircraft type most often occurs with the help of a parachute. Airplanes need airports. Helicopters cannot operate without landing pad. But the copter can take off from any more or less flat piece of land and make a landing there. But this doesn't exhaust the list of their advantages. Firstly, quadcopter is something more stable. It is more accurately positioned over the battlefield. For helicopter, it is enough to break off a piece of a screw or a propeller with a bullet, and the helicopter will fall. He now stands 4 motors, and if we put 8 motors and 8 screws on aircraft, then to completely disable it, it would be necessary to disable 2 screws and 2 motors, and this is quite difficult to do. One might jump to the conclusion that how is it possible to compare a tiny copter and a huge helicopter? It turns out you can, for example, by price. The cost of combat helicopter is several $1,000,000. And the cost of this aircraft is from $50,000. Our character knows what he says. His aircraft can arrange such transfer of troops. Igor Belov assures that his aircrafts will power past airplanes and helicopters. We have succeeded in dragging through the air 30 kilograms using 1 kilowatt. Helicopter 5 kilograms. The plane from 8 to 15–16 kilograms. That is a ratio, and every kilowatt of energy expended per 1 kilogram is extra fuel, extra money, and so on. However, with regard to the efficiency, the nature is beyond competition. There are known cases where sea eagles have carried children whose weight was more than the weight of the bird itself. And here, note, here is another premiere of this issue of military acceptance. A passenger copter with Russian design, man riding quadcopter, it looks as strange as probably in the early 20th century looked people in the plane. I would like to show the copter in action, to be sure, to fly by myself. But the device has no flight certificate, and therefore it is possible only to admire it. However, the designer Igor Belov says, there is another few months to go. We will finish this one in several weeks, and it will fly. Maybe it will take longer because it's necessary to test domestic engines before flights. And what is the most interesting, this is a purely civil engineering, although the machine is created with a view to the army. Copter can be used for military usage. It can be used in a large number of goals. The first one is evacuation, and for example, the wounded from battlefield. The following is delivery of various types of ammunition. and the place on battlefields without risk. About copters from the future we will talk later, but for now let us return to the paintball base, where we simulate the fight against terrorists using existing pilotless technologies. So with the help of spy copter we conduct reconnaissance. Now it's necessary to attack. The ideal attack is means lack of hazard to lives of special forces soldiers. Now the wedge joins the battlefield. It's armed with the same weapon, a paintball marker. We are passing this wedge into a combat zone, and I will try to open fire. This wedge operates by using the same remote control. We turn the tower like that, left and right, like that, up and down, and that's a button for shooting. What is the advantage of this scheme? Because this is a tank, it may be armed, and thus it defeats terrorists at short range from 5–10 meters. So far it looks like a toy, but imagine that instead of a paintball marker there will be an automatic grenade launcher or a heavy machine gun. But most importantly think about the car called Uranus 9, the first heavy fighting robot of the Russian army. Its armor and weapons resembles a small tank. In fact, it can be more dangerous than several tanks because there are no people inside, and therefore it is not a pity to bring machine against the enemy. Here in a battle on the paintball field, our wedge acts exactly the same as the Uranus 9. At the same time, to send it into a battle you need just 2 small suitcases with the equipment. And of course it's necessary to be able to control this machine. As for me, I've lost it in the smoke. We are passing to remote control to specialists and watching what is happening on the monitor. We have a second attack. Go! Again we are moving to the front. Coming to grips. It arrived at close range and shot them inside. Since the tank is armed, it doesn't matter for itself. The wedge is not hiding and terrorists opening a hurricane of fire on it. But it was useless. Barely smoke cleared, we are checking results. Here are the preliminary results. The first fighter has a punch in his gun. The second one shot in the stomach. The third one headshot. Of course, our wedge has more damages. But imagine if at this point was a real armor, it wouldn't have been damaged in this situation. However, the main characters of our film still not pilotless tanks but quadcopters. Soon you will see how they work in conjunction with wedge. And in the meantime pay attention to this exhibit shown in the exhibition of arms Army 2016. Is a robot tank made on the basis of the BMP-3. Here it is. It's called Complex Whirlwind. He also has an automatic gun and 2 strong crew. But, if you wish, people can be planted, and then the complex becomes robotic. It's also included 6 quadcopters and platform for suicide bombing. At preliminary tests of the complex, it has shown itself on the positive side. Sergei Popov, chief specialist of Russian Army's robots. If such a person talks about performance, so this complex is in fact a real killing machine. For example, a complex Whirlwind has a platform for the suicide bombing. Kamikaze robot then can undermine the enemy tank or strengthening. But here the particular attention deserves these small drones. They are part of the complex too. Here we have a reconnaissance copter. It can rise up to 30 meters, from which it will be possible to conduct reconnaissance. Now let's go back to our training ground with simulated terrorists. You've seen how they were taken under fire by the wedge. Now we will try to organize a paintball attack from the air. Let us demonstrate our first strike object. This is a copter, but not ordinary. Here it has a pipe, which is going to be immersed with the paintball grenade. Paintball grenade is not just a firecracker. Inside a small body there are hundreds of submunitions. Except that, the submunitions are plastic rather than steel. This is a complete imitation of combat grenade. It remains to arm it and gently insert into the container. In case of a copter, this is a cylinder at the bottom of the UAV. Removing the check. At this point, if you don't expose your hands, it will not explode? It will not explode, because I'm holding it. It's already going to explode now. Exploded. We realized the disadvantages of the method. Now we will study its advantages. Absolutely. We messed up the main army regulations. Use the proper ammunition. The fact is that, as you understood, the toy grenade sent into flight in a charged state. It's not exploding because of rotation of pipe walls. Once copter reaches the target, the operator gives a signal that opens leaves, and at this moment grenade falls and explodes. So our paintball grenade turned out to be smaller than the diameter of the battle grenade. So it isn't tightly joined to the cylinder, and the undermining has occurred beforehand. Well, let's try again. We are not removing the check at this time. Yes, we are not removing the check. Let's put it here. It exactly meets the shape. I will charge it as is right and proper. Then we close it. That's all. Now imagine that this copter flies in the air. Let's make a release of a grenade in my hands. Hold it. Here it falls into the hands. And from what distance can the remote management of release be done? From any distance. If there is a digital system, then tens of kilometers. So we start. Guys, now our operators will simply tape. Wow! No, paintball grenade didn't want to work. Yes, at this time the shot was more powerful, it must be said. Yeah, very strong. Our plastic pipe destroyed. Even some debris flew. But the system works nevertheless. Is Copter alive? Copter is alive, so now we will restore it. It's not scary. Our experiment is close to the edge, but, strange as it may seem, this emergency situation demonstrated us another important advantage of a combat copter. It's easy to repair. And then, finally, third round of fighting with indocile ammunition proved to be successful. It's time to attack the fortified position of terrorists. Charged copter rises into the air. The wedge goes to the battle simultaneously, and while ground drone shooting enemy positions, the copter with plastic grenade flies from the top. In the midst of the battle, no one didn't notice it. And now the crucial point. The copter hovers above the house. The command to release. Miniature bomb flew directly to the back of one of the terrorists. More truly to our producer. Well, sorry, Ilya. Of course, one grenade cannot be compared with plane or helicopter ammunition complement, but as you have seen, copter can work punctually, and what is the most importantly, this is a very cheap technology, so it's easy to imagine an attack of hundreds of copters covering the enemy, like a swarm of not angry bees, but furry wasps. And as well as any swarm has its queen, who is ruling others, there is a chief in a flight of drones. It's clear that this person is the operator who controls drones behind the battle line, but the question arises how to deliver a signal to the copter, which is located many kilometers away from the operator, and how to get information back. Here drone dispatcher comes to the aid. It's a flying base station. It's intended to ensure communication on the battlefield at a distance of 2-5 kilometers of a broadband femto-cell connection. It helps to connect ground drones, swarms of drones, and ground-based truck tanks. This system can fly any amount of time because it's powered by cable through a high-voltage generator and amplifier. Thus it can fly for several hours and keep the communication system on a battlefield. Copter antenna can manage tens and even hundreds of drones simultaneously, or, if necessary, to ensure communication between regular army units, because in fact, This drone is Wi-Fi cell with propellers, flying communication center, while it provides a connection of such quality that any civil internet will go anywhere. And what is the most important, no one will hack this network. Once we have already shown a similar system on the example of the kind drone, which has already added to armory, but contrary to the Skype, hackers cannot access it. Cannot access it, that's right, because as you can see, communication device is provided with cryptographic protection equipment, which doesn't allow to understand what signal intercepted by an opponent if he possesses a certain radio scanner or other scanning radio frequency range equipment. It means that he sees that someone somewhere is doing something, whether it's a mobile phone or video or just indicates a level of background noise. He sees kind of problem, frequency drift, but he can't understand what it is. Not only drones can be used as such a broadcasting transmitter, but for example aerostats. The Ministry of Defense seriously thought about returning to the operation of aircrafts operating in hot air. There are, for example, fixed aerostats and free aerostats. They have different aims. Their production generally is the same. Of course, it has its own peculiarities in terms of the use of different raw materials, in terms of size and in terms of different types of inspections and tests which ultimately undergoes this technique. The aerostat can stay in the air for weeks, and at several kilometers high, it's difficult to see, even though the impressive size. In view of light duration, copters of course can't repeat it. Great many people, by the way, consider in particular the cruising endurance is the Achilles heel of these drones. And now attention, try to guess how long this aircraft will hold in the air. The answer is 5 hours. It's all about the engine, and this drone has hydrogen engine. The peculiarity of this aircraft is that it uses a new source of energy. It can significantly increase the duration of the flight. There is compressed hydrogen on board, which is converted into electricity through the fuel cell. Calculated parameters inherent in the design are from 3 hours. Depending on the applied pressure, this index can be increased up to 5 hours. So we decided to hold a small but quiet roadie experiment, to let the drone work as a street cleaner. Time of action autumn, scene path littered with leaves. Is it possible for drone to blow out this leaf pile using its screw's power? No problem. Of course our experiment was a joke. No one will use copter to clear the streets. And now a different matter is drone cartography. Here drones now operating in full force and effect. For example, they are creating such three-dimensional map of the area, on which you can see in 3D even a rut on the road. The software that we developed allows the operator to get rid of a manual work. It means that it completely automatically processes the material. We took the camera and walked around, for example, a monument and filmed it from all sides. At output we get a 3D model. We can walk around a person and receive a human model. This Russian technology is already widely used around the world for computer games and Hollywood blockbusters, as well as to create a three-dimensional detailed city maps. For example, a map of Tomsk is 370 square kilometers within the accuracy of centimeter. We can zoom in and see how it looks up close. The resolution is 10 centimeters per pixel. It's a geodetic accuracy. One can only imagine how much easier it will be to work for Army headquarters in the presence of such map, where everything can be seen at any angle. There is only one question: will the profession of cartographer lose its applicability in a competition with such technology, and not only this profession? What is unique in our current issue is that we have a record number of record-breaking aircrafts. This unit is a Czech plane MF-4. In fact, the uniqueness of it is that this is a drone aircraft. And now I want to acquaint you with a pilot of unmanned aircraft. What is your name? My name is Denis. Dennis, correctly understand that. Let's sit down. That formally during the flight you can sit with your arms raised up high and the aircraft will perform the aerobatics. Not the aerobatics, it will perform flying tasks. You mean that you can leave it uncontrolled? Yes, fully uncontrolled. You are in here just for? Here on the plane I'm for operating, controlling the operation of the equipment, and in emergency situations I can assume the control. This experiment was conducted on one of our grounds near Moscow. This plane has from drone only computer software and hardware with which this program works. But the plane is real and the human is alive. And in spite of the fact that human is inside, all actions of the aircraft are controlled from the ground. In theory, he should be two armchairs. Actually now here is only one, because the second seat is occupied with equipment. Is this a plane laboratory? Yes, it's a plane laboratory. It's intended for testing systems that are used in unmanned aerial vehicles. Dear viewers, for you to ensure that everything is honest, we asked our test engineer don't keep his hands on the controller where it's possible. In the cabin we installed several cameras to see how works the drone with a pilot on board. Well, our drone goes to the starting point. At the same time, another and two ground unmanned vehicles start preparing. The uniqueness of our present experiment is that ground drones and air drone, in fact, will perform the same task, which goes from a single command center. So, our pilotless plane with pilot on board took off and started his work on the detection of targets. It will take a little time and it will give the command to caterpillar drones to destroy this target. Now the question arises, who is after all controls these aircrafts? For this purpose there is a special point. How is it called? It's a complex of group control of unmanned aerial vehicles and ground robotic complexes. The keyword is group. From here you can manage multiple unmanned aerial vehicles, including the machine that you have observed. There is a commander or class who oversees a tactical situation and can timely receive information from the superior command and distribute tasks among different unmanned aerial vehicles and ground robotic complexes. I repeat the word group because from the center it's possible to manage not only UAV in the air, but also the two robots on the ground. Again, they operate in tandem. The aircraft engaged in the exploration and transmits the information on the ground, and ground drones come to attack. People are just watching what is happening. This is a concept of the war of the future. The present level of technology development allows you to make unmanned any plane, but of course it still requires a lot of work to ensure, for example, security, solution of problems of a legal nature, and of course usage of large UAVs for military purposes requires a competent tactics of their application. Meanwhile, Denis Barachovich, the passenger of a drone, continues his flight. Let's look more closely to his reaction. During takeoff and long time after, Denis didn't release the controller. It's clear that he is stressed, preparing to pick up the aircraft if something will go wrong. Then when the aircraft goes high, Denis allows himself to look around, but the pilot still holds the controller. After another 5 minutes, Denis decided finally to take his hands off, but his determination not last long. Finally, closer to the end of the flight, believing the technique, he releases the controller and deliberately puts his hands on the dashboard. Of course, on the pilot-passenger excitement is understandable. Imagine that you are sitting in the car, which is itself involved in a rally race. The enormous speed, opportunity to brake at every single moment, and the controls has an electronic program. After landing, Dennis admitted that he could hardly control the plane as well as it was done by a computer program. This is quite strange, because on the pathway the aircraft is actively maneuvering, and this caused a bit stress state. This is unusual. It performs very intense maneuvers on the angle, rate and height. That's why I'm nervous. In fact, no one doubts that future belongs to drones, and sooner or later the man will only control, not manage. However, to be honest, with all the achievements of UAVs in general, and copters in particular, these technologies still have to be worked over. Do you remember that at the beginning of our program, we showed a rescue copter, which can lift a 40 kilos cargo? That's what happened before our eyes on the next attempt of flight. Regular start and easy height gain even higher than at first time, but a minute later one of the propellers explodes. That's all, a crash. On the way to the crash, the developer discusses what has really happened. This is because most likely a knot was caught and it wasn't reinforced with carbon fiber. Here it's necessary to explain, a knot was caught. This is about the manufacturing process of the screw. The fact is that the propellers on this experimental copter are made of tree. The material is of course lighter than a carbon fiber, but here such unforeseen complication may be about to happen. Pay attention to the reaction of developers. No embarrassment, no sorrow. They know they are engaged in a matter for the future, the near future. That's nothing, it will fly next time. Their work is expected and monitored, so I'm even afraid of it. Otherwise, how to explain the appearance of special air defense systems designed exclusively for the copter's detection? We were at various times told how air defense systems works. The radar detects a target. The missile or projectile automatically knocks it. But when the targets are so small that the radar cannot detect them or can be mistaken for a false target. But even if it will notice it, shooting down the pennyworth copter with expensive missile is extremely inefficient. Therefore, this particular anti-copter system was created recently. Its surveillance camera with a distance of 800 meters is able to take down the drone with size of just 30 centimeters. Our task was to resist, or to be more exact, to detect the UAV systems of extremely small sizes. It needs only 1 second to understand where is a copter and where is, for example, a bird. As it happens, you can see on the screen, red squares are copters, green birds. After detection, the recognition camera came in with. Its task is to find out the exact type and model of the drone. But what comes next after the detection? How to shoot down the enemy copter? The solution is this special electronic gun. This gun should be directed towards the drone, and then you have to pull the trigger, and countermeasure will be performed. The wind will blow off a UAV aside. The operator will stop seeing the picture obtained with the drone, and it lost satellites. A picture and controls disappears. If, for example, in antenna radiation pattern would be at least 10 drones, all of them will be blocked. This gun shoots with no bullets but special pulses. One shot, and at a distance of at least 300 meters, any radio signal will be muted. It means that copters remain without a connection with the base, becoming helpless toys. Frankly speaking, these protection systems, in contrast to the real air defense systems, also looks like a toy. Even the drones are sometimes difficult to take to be a serious weapon, but it's a mistake. The unique combination of simplicity, cost and maneuverability and the rapid development of pilotless technologies leave no doubt. The era of combat drones is next.